Okay, for letter A, we have f of negative 2, so we go to the x, that's x is negative 2, and we get the y value for f, which is 3. And then g of 3, our y value at g is positive 2. Alright, letter B, we say g of f of 0. So first we do f of 0. There's x is 0, f of 0 is equal to 1. So now this is like saying g of 1. And then at 1, you notice that you could have a y value of 2 or of 0, but since it's closed here, that's equal to 0. Okay, next we have h of g of negative 2. So it's h of, now g of negative 2. Same reason it's closed here, so that's like saying that's h of negative 1. Because g of negative 2 is negative 1. And just a reminder, when it's written like that, that's the same thing as having h of g of negative 2. So g of negative 2 is negative 1. Then we plug in negative 1 to h. That's negative 3 times negative 1 plus 2, which is equal to 5. Okay, letter D says p of h of x. So again, that's like saying p of h of x, or p of negative 3x plus 2. So we plug in negative 3x plus 2 each time we have an x. So everywhere we see an x, we plug in negative 3x plus 2 into p. So that's going to be equal to negative 3x plus 2 squared minus 2 times negative 3x plus 2 minus 3, which becomes 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. Distribute negative 2, and we get plus 6x, and then minus 4 and minus 3. Okay, then we can see that the positive 4 and the negative 4 cancel. We get 9x squared, negative 12x plus 6x is minus 6x minus 3. You could go ahead and factor that, but I'm okay with you guys leaving that as your final answer. Alright. Next, for letter E, it says find the x and y intercepts of t of x. T of x is equal to 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 18x minus 36. So I'm going to do the y-intercept first. That one's a little bit easier. With the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for all of our x values, and we just get that basically y equals negative 36. So we plugged in 0 for x, so that's 0, negative 36. And that's our y-intercept. To get the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y, so we have 0 equals 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 18x minus 36. We're going to factor out by grouping, so I get x plus 2, and then I factor out negative 18, and I get another x plus 2. Then I can factor out that x plus 2. Right, factor that out from both of them, and we're left with 2x squared minus 18. And now I set that equal to 0, and that part equal to 0. When I set x plus 2 equal to 0, I get x equals negative 2. When I set 2x squared minus 18 equal to 0, I add over 18, so we have 2x squared equals 18. Divide by 2, you get x squared equals 9. Take the square root of both sides, and we get x equals plus or minus 3. So that means our x-intercepts are negative 2, 0, and plus or minus 3, 0. Alright, next question wants vertical asymptotes. One thing just to be careful with vertical asymptotes is we want to make sure to factor out the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator, so to make sure that there's not a hole. So we have 8x cubed minus 64 divided by x squared minus 2x minus 3. And if we factored out the numerator, you'd factor out an 8 first, and have x cubed minus 8, and then you could have that as x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 2. And then when we factor out the denominator, we'll get divided by x minus 3 times x plus 1. We see nothing factors out, which means there's no whole, so when we take the denominator and set it equal to 0, that's going to give us our vertical asymptotes. So those are at x equals 3 and negative 1. So those are our vertical asymptotes. Letter G is horizontal asymptotes. Really, when you see horizontal asymptotes from now on, you want to think it as the limit as x approaches infinity and the limit as x approaches negative infinity. And this is going to be of 8x cubed minus 64 divided by 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 18x minus 36. And we're looking for our biggest exponent, which is 3. And when it's the same in the numerator and the denominator, we just do that a over b case, so it's 8 divided by 2, or 4, and so we're going to get y equals 4. Make sure you write this as y equals 4, and not just 4. Alright, next we're going to factor out q of x and w of x. Alright, for q of x, we have 8x cubed minus 64. You can do one of two things. You can either factor out the 8 first, and then do the SOAP method. So you'd have 8 times x squared, x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 2. Or you could just start from here and do the cube root of 8x cubed is 2x, and the cube root of negative 64 is negative 4, or just 4. So, right, if you get rid of that negative. So that's our a term and our b term. So you could just call this 2x minus 4 times 4x squared, and then plus 8x plus 16. So both of those are acceptable for factoring q of x. And then for w of x, right, I'll do that up here, we get 3x plus 2 times 3x minus 2. And then lastly, we have our two piecewise function. And I call this a piecewise function. It's not really, but we're going to turn it into a piecewise function. So for letter I, we're going to say that this is going to be equal to a piecewise function. And we take that 6x minus 6, right, that was inside of here. We set that equal to 0 to see when it changes. So we get 6x equals 6, x equals 1. So we know it changes when x is less than 1 and when x is greater than 1. And so when x is less than 1, we take that absolute value and we turn it to be a negative parentheses. So it's like having negative 1/2 times 6x minus 6 minus 1. And then when x is greater than 1, we make it positive 1/2 times 6x minus 6 minus 1. I'll distribute. That's negative 3x minus 3 minus 1 becomes minus 4 when x is less than 1. And then we get positive 3x minus 3 minus 1 becomes minus 4. Oh, I messed up here. This should have been plus 3 minus 1, so that would have been minus 2. Sorry, plus 2. Plus 2. Okay. So, and then you can put the equals in either case in this situation. Alright, I'll graph it up here. So, we know we're going to switch at positive 1. So negative 3x plus 2, right? Start at 2, down 3 over 1. And then when it's greater than 1, we would have started at negative 4 and gone up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. But notice this graph only appears on the right side, and this one is only on the left side. Alright, so that's our graph for letter I. And then lastly for letter J, we have 3 cases, so I'm going to just put in some lines to help me out. So that's at x is less than negative 1, and then it's also going to change at x is 2. So this is like saying y equals negative 2, right? And this is the very left case. So we're going to go to y is negative 2. Right? And this graph would look like this the whole way. But again, we only draw it to the left. And it's closed, so I'm going to put a closed circle there because it's equal there. Okay. Then our next one is like having y equals x squared minus 2. And that's in this middle section. So I go down 2, and then x squared, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, but I'll put an open circle there, right, because it's negative 1 is less than x. And then if I plug in 2 to this, I get 4 minus 2 is 2. And this one is a closed circle. Make sure that this graph looks curved and it's not linear. Then lastly, we have 2x minus 4. So you could start off at negative 4, go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And that is our line there. So that's our graph for letter J. Okay, hopefully this helped and you guys are ready to just retake the review quiz and get 100% by Tuesday.